right, welcome back. Now, the recent cases of women falling victim to the hands of a current or ex-lover have raised a lot of concern as to whether women are safe in public or even in their own homes. But beyond that, how do many of these relationships form? And what are the motives of both parties when they get into them? Has violence become an acceptable emotional expression in relationships? And how do we begin to foster healthier and beneficial relationships between male and female? So those are some of the questions we hope to answer in this conversation. Joining me in studio for my far right is Emmanuel Machete, who's a psychologist. We also have Betty Adero, who is the founder of the Betty Adero Foundation. We also have Marcus Olang, who is the founder and lead of Courage Stories. I don't know if you tell us a bit more about it later on. And of course, we have a mini audience joining us, various students from the Technical University of Kenya and the University of Nairobi. Thank you all for joining me. And we also have Beryl Adhiambo, aka Africa, who is a feminist, and she'll be telling us more about some of the engagements they've been having with the public to raise awareness on femicide here in Kenya. But I want to begin with you all, just to kind of set context to this whole conversation on how relationships form. Under what premise do we find many of the relationships in your generation beginning? Is it love? You know, you see someone on campus, you approach them, hey, you want to go out? Or is it transactional? You expect something because you've given something. So what would you say forms most or informs most of the relationships? I can start with you.
My name is Kwei Isaac, alias Comrade Isaka. I think we live in a generation where most relationships are based on transactions. People get attracted to you basing on who you are, what you are, or what you have at the moment. We tend to talk about, I don't know, a perfect relationship, but then the issue here, the key point here is how moneyed. For example, in campus, you'll find that somebody who is known by many people and looks like he's living a flashy life in the hostel, or rather has a house outside the school, will be more attractive than this one guy who eats from the mess and sleeps in the hostels. Okay. So that is what drives love in, for example, in most youths at the moment.
Interesting. I want to hear from a lady.
My name is Mwangangi Wanza Angeline, and I'm also vice chairperson. So to me, I a little bit tend to differ with him. To me, when I want to get into a relationship, I first think of a 50-50 thing. I think of a relationship where when he coughs, I also cough. When he buys, I buy. So there's no way, like, you'll not be on the top. You're the same level. We share everything equally. So you have no say over me. That's what I think.
So it's a case of equals coming together. Not the guy has money, so he has, you know, I guess more influence over what you do and what you wear and whatnot. Okay, so I saw a hand up here in the front.
Once more, my name is Mary.
Let's get the mic to you.
My name is Mary Ojwang, chairperson WOSWA. I'd like to bring to our attention that in WOSWA, every time a fresher comes to the university, that's the conversation we start about relationship, about sex, about how to protect yourself as a woman. And we share our stories. When we came to campus, how did we get about it? Were we approached? What were our boyfriends? And it doesn't miss talking about the sponsor relationship because it's happening as far as we are concerned.
So you have these conversations with them right as they come onto campus.
Yes.
So that shows it's a big problem.
It is a problem, but recently we don't record so much cases because we've trained our girls to focus more on entrepreneurial activities rather than focusing on other immoral ways of getting
Who would you say
money.
is the initiator of most relationships, women or men?
Both parties.
Both parties.
Yes.
So it's an equal
but you see, when
of
a fresher comes to the university, she attracts both second years, third years, fourth years, and even sponsors. They are called the gold rush thing. Everyone wants to catch a fresher because they are one virgin, they are timid, they are ignorant, and they are naive, and they are easygoing. they don't ask for much. That's what men will say.
So those are oftentimes the young ladies that you'll find end up in quite toxic relationships, in your view?
Sure.
Okay, because of that naivete of being young and just coming into college.
And worst, they think that it's even cool to have all men seducing you. So they even get to as far. Right now we are mentoring some. They go to as far sleeping around with not just 10, but even more than 10.
I want to hear from a gentleman, because you had mentioned, Isaac, the guy who goes to the mess hall to have lunch. That's majority of guys on campus, exactly. I want to know about their experience and how they are socialized. Is there a form at times of low self-esteem because you feel, I don't have the money, I didn't come from a family that's known, I'm not a sponsor who's able to drive with a big car on campus and literally attract and gravitate all these women towards me? What is the experience of that young man before I come to my panel? If we can hear from you.
Personally, I have a different view because in campus, most of us come while single, and you find that our age mates or our peers have girlfriends, boyfriends, and it's all about peer pressure, because you find him, he has a girlfriend, you don't have one, you don't know how you'll approach one, maybe. Yeah, so you'll end up asking, hey, how did you find one, and what can I do? I don't have money. Where do you source your money to feed them? Basically, I'm basing my argument in terms of peer pressure. Yeah.
Peer pressure is also another driving force. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Is there another?
Okay, my name is Billy. Basically, I'll talk about me being an anthropologist. My point of view is that where is the meeting point between these two individuals? It depends with where you spend most of your time. Because where I spend most of my time is where I can find the girl that I would wish to mingle with, to spend most of the time with. Then I'm an African. And from where I come from the background I was brought up, I could see my father investing much in about the relationship between mom and dad. He could make sure everything is okay. So in a relationship as a man, I believe that I should make sure everything is okay and everything is taking the right course. Yep.
So do you find it's harder to approach the opposite sex today? And this is for men.
It depends. What do you want? And it also depends with the other party. What is the interest? Maybe you're attracted by the virtue, how she presents herself. Yeah. Maybe you're attracted by her looks. Men are attracted with different things. Now, the bigger question is, what is she interested with? What you may see in her is not what she may have seen in you. That might bring some misunderstanding between the individuals.
Okay, so we're kind of getting a mixed bag in terms of what is informing a lot of these relationships and how young people get together. But from what you hear initially, let me just kind of hear from my panel before I give you direct questions. Marcus.
So first off, if I may start off by saying, part of this conversation and why I love that it's happening is it's an incredibly layered conversation. There's a lot of history behind it. There's a lot of experience behind it. Each and every one of us, and as the respective genders as well. There's a lot behind it. The one thing that I feel the need to point out, and it's not something that is our fault as those who are seated here, but it's something that we can take up as a challenge going forward, is a lot of times, and I have been guilty of this in the past, we go into relationships not knowing who we are and what we stand for and what we believe in. Because I hear your point where you talk about what she wants versus what I want. Absolutely valid. But then there's an element of understanding what I am and what I stand for. Am I going to change who I am because of what she wants? Which is where I feel a lot of these issues come in, which is where someone, for instance, and this is in no way to excuse some of these cases that are happening, which is where someone will say, oh, I went and took an M-Shwari, or I went and took a loan, or this and that, to then give this person, and then I didn't get anything in return out of it? Did you give it because you wanted something in return? Were you clear on that? Or were you giving it out of the goodness of your heart because that is the kind of soul that you are? We go into a lot of these situations, I feel, not knowing who we are, what we stand for, and therefore when we get something other than what other people have told us to expect, then things start going sideways.
Betty, what's your take from what you've been hearing?
Wow, thank you, young men and women, for enlightening us, on the way in which some of these relationships play out. I see a good mix, of motivations into why people get into relationships. I also see a good mix in terms of how do you position yourself for that relationship to move forward. I hear the lady at the back saying for her, it's a 50-50, bring, I bring, which is quite unique, but very, very interesting, and perhaps maybe a solution sits right there. But for me, more importantly, is what she said, that already there's a plan that recognizes the fact that as a freshman, as a fresh woman, in an institution of higher learning, there are problems. You're coming into a completely new environment. There's no parent, there's no teacher, there's no bell. You're just by your own. To plan, yourself the right way. And of course, the orientation is as detailed as letting the fresh young women know what's gonna definitely, most likely happen to them. And I like the fact that she brought out the fact that such women are fresh ground. Like everyone wants the gold rush. Everyone wants to go and rush and pick, a fresh one. And if you're there, you're from a village like where I grew up called Wotogik Village, and you've landed in UN. And then all these men, from the ones who eat in the mess, as well as the ones who, stay outside, the ones who drive, the ones who don't drive, the sponsors and the non-sponsors are all chasing after you, except you're grounded, firmly on your own values that we hope you came there with. Plus the orientation that's already planned for, then I think that particular case is a recipe for disaster. But one last thing I wanted to say very quickly, and I know our audience is young people. This is what I tell my own sons, is that when you're out looking for a relationship, think quickly and take your time to think higher and deeper on what is it that's going to draw you to this one and not this one. All right? Because that is also where perhaps a big problem, really sits. What's your motivation to get into this relationship? Right. Is it just because, oh, she looks so nice and she smells nice and she dresses nice, and what comes into your mind is you want to lay her down? Or is it someone you want to think more closely with in terms of nurturing a relationship that could be long-term? I know many people who found spouses, in campus, and they have lived happily ever after. So we are not saying relationship is bad. We're just trying to say that we need to take a bit of time to think about what kind of relationship is this that we are talking about, and what is the motivation, and what are some of the things you as a young man, as a young woman need to look out for to tell yourself that this is a relationship worth pursuing. And
I think, just to be clear, a lot of the reasons and motivations that you guys gave are not abnormal. They've been here. They've been issues. But I think why we're even having this discussion today is because why do they end up coming to an extreme, like what we saw with Ivy Wangeshi or Sharon Otieno? Like, why do they get to that point? Which I'll come to you, Emmanuel, from a psychological kind of perspective. We have not been seeing this height of violence against women, in the public until now. And I wonder what could be informing that. We've heard from them in terms of motivations for relationships and whatnot, but from a mental, psychological aspect, what do you think could be driving that?
Thank you very much, Victoria. I want to say this, that you realize that we are living in a society where relationships are like clothes that are on fashion. Today, I'm in this relationship, tomorrow I'll get this other one, just because I feel it is now updated with me. Now, when you come to it mentally, we are getting into relationships with the idea that, what am I getting out of it? Remember, even when you refer it back to the Bible tells you clearly, for God so loved the world that he even gave. So in any relationship that you get in, you give yourself first. You give your ideas. But the moment you start focusing on it, what am I getting back? It always draws you back. Now, From a psychological point of view, we are getting to at this point that the relationships are getting more fertile is because there is a pain somewhere. There is a deep pain. Somebody can't travel for more than 4 hours all the way from Thika to Eldoret with that burning anger and reach Eldoret, it is not yet capsized, and commit a murder, and you think that it is normal. It means that there is something deep inside them that has been burning. And that brings us back to what we call depression. We fear talking about depression. We are suffering in silence in these relationships. And at that moment we suffer in silence. We fear even talking about what we are going through. We don't have those accountability partners in the relationship. We don't know where the relationship is going, communication barriers, what have you. So the moment we reach at that point, emotions tend to reach at a point that they outburst. And anything that explodes, there are always casualties. That is why we are seeing a number of fatalities around. So as the youth, we need to start speaking out. There are people outside here who are ready to listen to us.
On that note, Emmanuel, let's take a short break, but of course a very, very important part of the conversation that you brought up, people's traumas that are being displayed when we see a lot of these public displays of violence against women. We'll be right back.